Now, I'll give the Americans a break because they're a little bit new here, but we got a lot of people that came up from all across the U.S. and from Florida, so let's show them a little bit better Canadian spirit. How's everybody doing tonight? All right, so to get started, I need everybody to stand up. Just stand up right away. Go ahead. You didn't think I was going to let you sit down the whole time, did you? So, a couple days ago, my wife got an email from a mom of a child with PWS, and this mom's fantastic. She's a great advocate. She's done a ton of work for our charity, but she was starting to get a little overwhelmed. And so my wife wrote back to her, and she told me the title. And the title of the email that she wrote back is, she said, "This conversation needs to begin with a hug." And I love that title. So today, we're going to talk a little bit about the challenges of Prader-Willi Syndrome, and we're going to talk about the progress that we've had in the last year. But the key thing we're going to talk about is, we're going to look into what's the one thing that can actually stop us from achieving our mission. What is that one thing? But I have to warn you that this conversation needs to begin with a hug. So, how many people here, by a show of hands, how many people have actually received a hug from a child with PWS? Show your hands. You can clap. Okay, so that's what I call a real hug. And if you've had it, you know. See, it's not a, I just met you, I don't really like you hug. It's not I just met you, but I'm trying to be polite hug. That's a real hug. So what I want you to do is turn to your spouse, turn to your friend, turn to your coworker, and just give them a great big real hug. Go ahead, go for it. Yeah, it could be a man hug or a little woman hug, but just make sure you give them a big real hug. Now that's a real hug. Okay, you can have a seat now. Because now, I'll give you a hug. Hey, there we go. Now we're ready to begin. So you see, we're the foundation for Prader-Willi research, and who can tell me, who's been paying attention, who can tell me what our mission is? Anybody? Somebody has to. Anyone? Okay, right over here, right over here. Jessica?
To eliminate the challenges of Prader-Willi Syndrome.
There you go. To eliminate the challenge of Prader-Willi Syndrome through the advancement of research. So, I have a quote from a 24-year-old with PWS that talks about a little bit about the main challenge that we always hear about, this excessive hunger. But before I read the quote, she's talking about a video contest. So, how many people, by a show of hands, have heard about our video entry into the Michelle Obama video contest? Okay, and by applause, how many people have been voting? Okay, so if you haven't heard about it, you're going to hear a little bit about it later today, but Michelle Obama, she started a video contest to help fight, and the group that actually has the most popular video gets a chance to go down to Washington and, for us, talk a little bit about why Prader-Willi Syndrome is important to research and its relation to obesity. So you'll hear more about that later, but that's the contest that this lady's referring to. So this is a 24-year-old Vanessa child from Mexico City, and she has Prader-Willi Syndrome. And she says, "We're in second place and gaining ground on first. We can do this. And then maybe, someday all of my friends and I won't be hungry anymore." Imagine going day to day, 24/7, 365 days a year, and never feeling full. And go to any means necessary just to get food, to try and be satisfied. You see, that is the life myself and many others face, or will eventually face, on a daily basis. Because the mechanism in the brain that is supposed to tell one that they are full does not work. Every bit of research brings us one step closer to a solution to help or eliminate the hunger. The other challenges me and many others have no choice but to carry every day, which could mean the full tummy we have never had, the chance to live the independent life that many take for granted, and a kitchen without locks on everything except the kitchen sink. So I'm asking you to take 1 minute of your time and vote. It could one day change everything I have dealt with for 25 years, cure or no cure. So many people just do not understand it. We deserve to be heard. And I have another quote for you, and it's maybe a little bit closer to home, right here in Mississauga, and it's actually from my son Dante, a 7-year-old with PWS. So a couple weeks ago, he had finished dinner and he'd finished his dessert, and he said he wanted some more food. So we responded, we said, hey, we're finished dinner, it's time to go play a family game. And he turned around and he looked at us and he said, you don't know how I feel. You don't know how hungry I am. And you see, sometimes the only answer is a hug. So speaking of hugs, I don't know if you guys know, but how many people knew that when you actually hug someone, it actually increases the level of oxytocin that's actually released? How many people have heard of oxytocin before? I see a lot of hands over on this side. So if you haven't heard of it, oxytocin, it's called actually the trust drug. You might have heard about it when the wife or yourself have gone into labor. So when oxytocin is released, what it does, it's a hormone. It actually reduces the level of anxiety, reduces the level of fear, and it actually increases the level of trust and bonding. And oxytocin is actually released in increased levels during any sort of positive social encounter, like a hug. So if you're following along, then technically yes, you know, when we hugged a little bit earlier, we actually drugged everybody here with oxytocin. So the reason I'm talking about oxytocin is not just because we just drugged you, but the reason I'm talking about it is because there's been some recent research that has actually said that this oxytocin can actually help to reduce anxiety and improve behaviors in people with autism. So based on that, one of the preeminent PWS researchers in the world, who's actually flown in here from France, and if I can get Dr. Taubert to stand up. So Dr. Taubert, she took that idea and decided to do some research into oxytocin in people with PWS. And she had some very exciting initial results in improving the behavior. So, or you can keep standing, you can't sit down. So based on that, I'm happy to announce today, to continue our research, we're going to fund Dr. Taubert with an additional $50,000. Thank you. So oxytocin is just one example, but we've had just an amazing year. In the last year, we've increased our partnerships literally around the world with other PWS organizations, like OPWSA here, even in Ontario, with state organizations across the US, from Texas to California to Tennessee to Utah, and PWSA USA, as well as organizations internationally like Prader-Willi France. We've been able to actually literally fund, in the last year, $500,000 of research projects. And thanks to the Scotiabank One Small Step Walk Fund, we had events in over 50 cities and raised over $750,000. So I have one more announcement to make before we go on and talk about what's the one thing that can actually stop us. So for this announcement, I'd actually like to ask Dr. Weber to stand up. So, Dr. Weber's a researcher from Alberta, a fellow Canadian, flown in to talk at a conference. And the interesting thing is actually Dr. Weber was the first researcher that we actually funded from the funds that we generated here in Canada. So, Dr. Weber, she does a lot of interesting things, and what's interesting is she actually makes mice with Prader-Willi Syndrome. Now, that may not be too interesting. But what's even more interesting is through some of her recent research, she believes she's starting to zero in on the area in mice where stops the mice from feeling full. So she told me a little bit about her research, and she said just to, not to talk about, only to talk about it with a few of, my closest friends. So I'm going to talk about it with my 500 closest friends here today. So she explains it like this. She said, getting hungry works kind of like a car. There's kind of two mechanisms. So there's a gas and there's a brake. So to actually stop eating, you have to take your foot off the gas and you have to put your foot on the brake. Well, with the mice with PWS, the gas mechanism works fine. But what she's actually starting to find is that the brake mechanism doesn't work. So then she took it the next step, and she found this drug, MT2 is what it's called, and she actually gave this drug to the mice, and she found that it caused them to stop eating. So, this is early, it's unpublished work, and it's still a long, long way, and it's just a piece leading towards a treatment. And this MT2 is probably not a drug that's going to be effective in humans because it causes severe hypertension. So there's still a lot of work to be done. But the announcement that I would like to make today is that to continue this extremely promising research, our foundation and our scientific advisory board has actually committed an extra $150,000 to Dr. Prader. Thank you very much. Now, the funny part is this MT2 has actually got a couple other side effects. It actually increases the mice's sex drive. And it actually darkens their skin. So if there's anyone who wants to be skinny and have lots of sex and get a tan, then you should probably talk to Dr. Redford in the hallway. So now, getting to the question, with all this happening, what is the one thing that can actually stop us from eliminating the challenges of Prader-Willi syndrome? You see, because it's not the research. Because we've seen just two examples out of all the research projects of the promising stuff that's happening. And if you look out in Fragile X and Down syndrome, they're actually now researching drugs that could potentially actually improve the cognition. So the research isn't what's going to stop. And it's not the money. Because, since founding the FPWR in the US, we've committed over $2 million to PWS research. And whether it takes $3 million or $5 million, eventually we're going to get there. So it's not the money that's going to stop us. So the one thing that I want to talk about, if it's not the money, and if it's not the research, then what is it that it could be that's going to stop us? See, the one thing that can stop us is fear. Because the only way that we're actually not going to achieve our goal is if we actually stop trying. See, we've been told that we can't, the research is not going to find the answers, but we've proved that that's not true. And we've been told that we can't raise enough money, but we've gone ahead and proved that that can't be true. So what is it? You see, fear is the one thing that can stop us. It kind of whispers in your ear that, you know what, maybe it's going to take too long, so you shouldn't go ahead and start. You know what, maybe it's going to be too difficult, so why bother to even try? Maybe you're going to be embarrassed, so, you know what, maybe just don't ask. And I got to tell you, there's a lot of things to be scared of. Like going out and running a fundraiser, like asking your friends for money, and that's just to name a few. So the question is, why does our PWS community just collapse under the weight of all this fear? And my answer to you is by choosing to believe that we can make a difference in our children's life. See, it's making that choice, like Susan did, who took one small step to the next level. Or like Rachel did, who got the entire Prader-Willi France behind our mission. Or like Dr. Miller, who's dedicated her career to helping our children. See, once you make that choice, then you can step through that fear. Because it's okay if we don't get that research breakthrough this year, because we'll try again next year. And it's okay if we don't raise and hit our targets this year, because we'll just go ahead and get up and try again next year. And it's okay if we don't eliminate all the challenges of Prader-Willi syndrome this year, because we'll be right back at it again next year. But the one thing that's not okay is for us to tell our children that they can't run because we are too afraid to stand up. See, it's not okay to tell our children that they have no voice because we're afraid to speak up. And it is not okay. It's not okay to tell Dante that he's always going to be hungry because we were too scared to try. You see, the reason we're doing this is simple. It's Jaya, whose parents are running a walk for the first time in Ohio, and it's Sarah, whose parents helped found the FPWR here in Canada, and it's Chloe, whose parents keep coming up with creative fundraising ideas, and it's Daniel, whose parents last year raised over $20,000, and Ryan, whose dad has been fighting to get him on growth hormone, and all the families that have been struggling and haven't been afraid to fight for their children. So I'm asking you today to make that choice to fight with us. I'm asking you to vote to take our video to the White House, and I'm asking you to donate here tonight to our cause. Because by making that choice, all of you will be part of the day when my little Dante comes up to me, gives me a great big Dante hug, and says, "Daddy, you don't have to fight anymore. I'm not hungry any longer." Thank you very much.